This is going to be a pretty interactive session. The plan is to go for about an hour. We'll see how things go. I did put a link in the chat to this presentation, and what you'll see is got, the Google Slides up here, and I do this kind of weird thing where it actually shows, the thing over here on the left-hand side. It's really so that I can go back and forth between slides, especially since this is going to be pretty interactive. And so I'll do some quick introduction about like my background, and really the bulk of the time we're going to be spending tonight is we'll do a Scrum overview, and this is from the latest version, most current version of the Scrum guide from Ken and Jeff. It's the 2020 Scrum Guide, and I will give you lots of resources and hyperlinks in here too. So if you're in the document, you can go and take a look at these things. What I want to do is, before we get started, just kind of get an idea of where are you today in this journey of Scrum, whether it's considering Scrum, starting, practicing, coaching, leading. And then you see I have managing Scrum crossed out because it's not really something to like micromanage. It is, strangely enough, one of my most popular landing pages. And in each of these, if you want, you can go ahead and click on them. It will kind of show you some resources based on where you are. So for people here tonight, where are you as far as in your journey? This will help with some of the discussion and framing that.
Do you want us to put it in chat or?
Sure, sure, chat or just go ahead and say, it's a pretty small group.
Yeah.
So we got beginning, practicing.
I guess I'm looking for the next best thing.
Yeah, you
How's
you
that
kind of
sound?
go between, practicing, coaching, and leading, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I've seen too much of it. I almost want to say I've seen it all and been part of it all, but I certainly have seen people micromanage Scrum, and
Yep.
hopefully we're getting away from that. Knock on safe.
Right. So we got on the cusp BA Scrum Master. Wanted to see how I can interject Agile where there isn't much. That's always an interesting one to do, right? What's the moving on comment? Moving on, dot, dot, dot. Like you want to
So
just get away from it, or?
yeah, moving from Scrum to well, really go back to first principles. So when we go 3-5-3 at Scrum, yes, the values, but looking at, not as rigid around the rules, but
Mhm.
going back to first principles, going back to XP practices, going back to automation. And when I say going back to, we never really implemented it. So a lot of people applied Scrum over what they were doing, and then went, hang on, this doesn't work. But that's because you didn't actually embody the full, you took the lightweight framework, slapped it over what you had, and expected it to create some magic. So I'm hoping that we can explore that today as well.
Absolutely. And that's a really good point, especially for people who are just getting started with this. Scrum is pretty silent on all of the agile engineering practices. And David, you just nailed it, right? If you continue to do however you're doing work today and slap Scrum on top of it, you're probably going to wind up getting like mini waterfalls or really just, calling things
You get
Scrum.
Scrum butts, right?
Lots of scrum butts, and we'll
Yeah.
examine some of those. And David and I know Paul and Catherine, and Holly, looks like you can chime in here too on this. The Again, the presentation, we got the presentation link, and then I put a bunch of bonus material up there. There's what I will do is make this video available after. We do have cohort of students that want to watch this video. They weren't able to make it tonight, so one of the reasons I'm recording this is for them too. So they are doing a capstone project, I think, in Texas as a college university. So, quick introductions for me. My name is Mike Vizdos. I started my career way back with Ross Perot in electronic data systems back in the day. Did a couple startups. One was a success. One was a dot bomb during right that 2000 period. And really, I've been on my own consulting since 2001. I met Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland and got certified as a Scrum Master, one of the first really CSMs in January of 2004. So it's been over 20 years for that. I published a book with Scott Ambler in 2005, and I had to like kind of look at it like, whoa, it's been 20 years plus since I've, published this book. So, our precursor to SAFe, I'm sorry. So SAFe, Dean Leffingwell did a beautiful job in marketing. If you ever need a really crappy title for a book, this would be a really crappy title for a book. SAFe is a lot sexier than the Enterprise Unified Process, extending the rational unified process. This book took 2 freaking years to write. So as I was writing this book, I was learning about Scrum and kind of deprogramming 15 years of work as an engineer doing software
You,
development.
you would have got on better if you did a small EUP. So
Exactly.
EUP, EUP, or something like
Yep.
that. You could say, hey, do you want some EUP?
And Scott went on to do the disciplined agile delivery, the DAD stuff,
Yeah.
which he sold out to the PMI, and then the PMI paid him to go away. Him and Shallow and a bunch of people they left the PMI. Today, Scott Ambler is actually working on. He just finished another master's degree. By the way, Scott, if you don't know him, go to check out scottambler.com. He is a really good friend and mentor still today. And he just finished his master's degree, another master's degree, because he's got lots of them, I think, in AI. And he is really, really doubling down on making sure we have clean data that goes into AI. So you're going to see a lot, I think, messaging from him. If you're interested, AI is really woohoo, the hot topic. Scott really does have his hands around data and data integrity. So during those 2 years, as I was, learning about Scrum, starting to implement Scrum, I became a certified Scrum trainer in 2006. So it's been almost 20 years. I have been to over 60 countries now around the world, working with clients, doing training. Uh, Catherine and I met, I think 2008. Actually, Catherine, you wanted to hire me as a client, and I was like, yeah, no,
Yeah,
back in the day.
for folks who remember Nortel, we had just had an Agile coach in, and then I went to hire Mike, and then the other coach didn't get paid. So Mike and I were like, this is probably not going to work.
So,
Uh, anyway,
so right around 2006, I created implementing scrum.com. And if you've ever seen those chicken and pig cartoons, those are mine. So I use them, right? We published over 100 of them from 2006 to about 2011, 2012. And I still do send out a weekly email. Some people on here get that every Saturday morning since 2006. I'm pretty consistent, like millions of emails now, with pretty much the old cartoons, but with current learnings as I'm working with clients, working with our product development team. I've curated the 2020 Scrum Guide audiobook. I've been doing that since 2013. I did put up an interactive Scrum Guide. So the really cool thing about the interactive Scrum Guide is it's all completely free, clickable. If you've got to find terms on things, it's a really great resource for quick learning. And again, it's all available for free. I have a YouTube playlist. So each section of the Scrum Guide, we've got videos of each of those. Again, it's all free. You can see, the each section is basically spells out everything that you need to do. So the idea around this, I give away so much stuff, and as much stuff as I give away, clients still call. People still call. People that I taught back in, 2005, 2006, when they were junior, guess where they are now in companies, right? This was definitely the long-term play. There are senior people in organizations. Many people actually, when they unsubscribe from my list, they'll say, "Hey, I'm retiring." And every time I get the "Hey, I'm retiring" thing, I let them know, "Hey, thank you. Sail off into the sunset and let me know how it goes." So I think I'll be one of those guys that just kind of works till he drops. So that's I guess the whole Gen X thing. Here we are, right? The forgotten generation. So, uh, The overview that we're going to do tonight is based on the 2020 Scrum Guide. I showed you the interactive Scrum Guide. I've got revisions of all of the things that happened from the 2017 version to the 2020 version. You can look at those, and we're going to talk about some of those today. So if you've been around for a while, you might be using some old words, even older than 5 years old. And so we'll talk about like some of the damage that even does today by still referring to maybe stuff that was published back in, the early 2000s. This is all blessed and approved by Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland on their Scrum resource page. They link back to all my stuff, so completely legit. This drawing is something that we're gonna overview tonight, kind of walk through and have a discussion really as we walk through it. I'll give you a link to get to this. There's one pager, but it really will give you something that's completely linkable. It's all free, of course. This is a view of how to draw out Scrum, and you'll see why I kind of drew it in the order that I did. But we'll start out with a blank page. Woohoo! Here's where we are. Always fun to do. And the first thing we'll really talk about is Scrum Theory. And Scrum Theory is based on iterative and incremental delivery. David, you talked about that right away, right? If you're not set up to do iterative and incremental delivery, this is going to be really, really rough to do. And Ken and Jeff were really on purpose silent about any engineering practices because this is really focused on the people interactions, not the technical interactions. And they've taken a lot of heat for that over the years because they said, "Oh, you left all that stuff out," and they did it on purpose, which I know is kind of odd, but they wanted to really, really stay focused on what is the framework that really makes things work. Let's see, Chantel, you said you just went through the CSM and CSPO training, right? So this should look pretty familiar to you, and people who have been doing this for a while. Again, this might be a refresher, and what I want to start doing really is as we go through this, let me know your comments and talk more about some of these things as they come up. So the empirical Scrum pillars, the three pillars of Scrum include transparency, inspection, and adaptation. What's the hardest, mm, what's the most difficult one that maybe you have to like lean into when you're implementing Scrum or other agile techniques? Any feedback or thoughts on that?
I think it depends on the group that you're working with, but I think overall, I found that inspections, that inspection or that ability to look and kind of self-analyze and self-criticize is challenging for a lot of teams. And I think one of the reasons for that is they don't have the trust that they need to be able to be constructively critical of others. So that drawing those kind of, let's look at where we are, let's inspect where we are, drawing that kind of trust out in the groups is always been a little bit challenging for me. And I think the transparency is usually pretty easy. But inspection is tough because people they don't like to look at themselves and their groups and offer productive steps forward or steps for improvement.
If I
And
could
we
build on what you said, Holly, it's trust, right?
Yeah.
So without trust, there won't be any transparency,
Mm-hmm.
either from the people that we build the product for, the clients. They won't tell us what we have to build. Product can't work out what it is that has to be built, and they can't show it to the teams because they don't really know what has to be built. So everybody hides that away. It's the same thing then with inspection. If there's no trust, that engineer in the corner, I was that engineer at one stage. You sit there quiet and go, "Oh yeah, no, it's all rotten in Denmark. It's terrible over there." And then we do nothing about it because, well, somebody did pipe up last week. And nothing happened. What are we going to do? So all three of them fall down just on trust.
And it could be yep, we've always done it this way and we're not really willing to change. And there's been,
Hmm.
one person's job that has been to like hit that almost Homer Simpson button that says, run this report once a month, right? That's what they've done. And here's the thing, all of those people are retiring or have left or have now passed away, right? The whole concept of like succession planning is something that is being ignored. So people that are just getting started with this look for opportunities on that. And even people who've been doing this for a while, like as you're looking for clients, look at some of the clients that have like been around for a while, and you can say they have maybe an aging workforce, if that's the right word. Uh, those people are going to go away. What is their plan for whatever is next? I think is a big opportunity for some of the people that are listening and watching this tonight.
I wanted to kind of piggyback off what Holly's saying. I I see this to be able to do the inspection, you need psychological safety because we're really inspecting how we're doing with regards to people, relationships, process, and tools. And you need to be completely safe to both, as you say, Mike, amplify the good and highlight the areas for improvement. And then on the other side of that coin, you need the emotional maturity to be able to feel safe to bring up issues that are bothering you in a solution oriented way rather than accusatory. And the rest of the team has to have the maturity to hear it and look for a solution rather than get defensive. So psychological safety and emotional maturity really go hand in hand with that inspection and improvement.
And the Scrum Guide is silent on what Catherine really just talked about, but you can't be a successful Scrum Master without those attributes also. You can do, Scrum by the book, and again, it doesn't look anything like, reality sometimes. And what are the outcomes that you're producing, right? Is it, Jira tickets and burn down charts? No, don't worry about that, really. And arguing about, velocity and points, don't worry about that. The Scrum values. The interesting thing about the Scrum values, I spell out the word force. Um, so to keep it easy to remember, it's really focus, openness, respect, commitment, and it really is just courage. But I put extreme courage because fork didn't work, and that way I can also remember and think about like a lot of people that are in technology are on the introverted side of the spectrum. And sometimes it takes extreme courage just for people to be able to say, maybe, I have an opinion. Notice one of the words that's not here is trust. I really fought hard with Ken and Jeff to get trust into the Scrum Guide. They dug in pretty hard. When they reintroduced this in between the 2016 and 2017 version of the Scrum Guide, I did get uh, Jeff to bend enough to put in the line that basically says, without trust, none of this works. So there's a line in the Scrum Guide that says that. That was from me. Really, really, getting that in there to try to at least use the word trust. So it hasn't been dropped in the Scrum Guide yet, but we'll see if there's ever another version. Which, by the way, I don't think there's going to be another version. I think both of those guys have moved on. You know, what else really can they say?
Yeah.
So, force to remember is for the Scrum values. For any of these other than trust that we've already talked about, which is not a Scrum value, which which one of these, we talked about which one was hard. Which one of these is like easy for you to implement or really call out as you are implementing Scrum? Any examples that you have?
I always have a hard time with these value questions because everybody has their own intrinsic sort of values, you know.
Yep.
Focus for one person doesn't mean the same thing as focus for another. But I think if you've got a in progress on your Scrum backlog or your Scrum board, then people are focused every day. They know what's the burning issue, you know?
Mhm.
So some of the focus stuff happens just with being organized. Like, are we looking at the same thing?
Yeah. And really focusing on the highest priority things. I mean, Catherine, you braingasm over, the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Uh, a long time ago, the Standish Group released a chaos report and it showed a pie chart. And this pie chart had 20% of software was often and always. And the rest of the 80% was like rarely, seldom, never. And I thought, yeah, I just finished 2 years worth of development and there's no way that it's that. When I did the development, we had software optionality control, and I could actually go back in and see the features that were turned on by the customer, and it was only 19% of the features that were turned on. So it really changed my life looking at priorities and focus. Really, Pareto, the power law. When I'm brushing my teeth every morning, I'm like, what's the 20% I need to focus on today? And that's all I focus on.
Yeah, and if you start to go outside of that, that focus, guess what? You're, chasing squirrels and being super duper busy and a lot of times getting nothing done.
That's right.
Or hope maybe that's just me. Because I can be like a master at doing that too. Woohoo! Short attention span theater, right? So those are the Scrum values. And the Scrum team is made up of three accountabilities. They include developers, a product owner, and a Scrum Master. They used to be called roles. Catherine, do you have an opinion on why they changed from roles to accountabilities, or anybody else here that you want to talk about? I mean, I've gotten some readings from both Ken and Jeff on this, but why does it matter to use the word accountabilities versus roles of the past?
I'm going to let other folks answer that. Um, I don't have the history.
So they've introduced different types of accountabilities. To me, the whole team is accountable. You help each other out. Somebody's sick, somebody steps in, product owner's not there. There's a person that knows enough to proceed. What I always try to do if I'm a scrum master is skip a meeting or two. And, oh, Paul's goofing off. We don't need him anyway. Um, and they carry on so that everybody's accountable. So I'm curious as to where they're headed.
I mean, I certainly don't know the right answer, but I can tell you how I framed it as a guess. And that is that there are different people that have different skill sets and backgrounds. And there are some people that aren't developers and we're implementing Scrum in, say, like an HR environment. And it's not really important what the people's titles are or specifically what their skill sets are per se. What's important is that they understand what they are accountable for to the Scrum team. And that's kind of how I've explained it
Good.
to different teams.
Yep, I do like that. And remember when we talk about the accountability of developers, this isn't just software developers. I call them like the Cheeto Puff Dust kids, right? The people that have the Cheeto Puff Dust here. Hopefully, I don't have any here from coding. Um, it's anybody who's on the team that's contributing to getting the work done. And
People
one,
get very hung up on this developer's word, though. They get very hung up on it.
yep, yep.
Well,
And
and
actually,
that could be, could you comment? I mean, that indeed could be the idea of role. People get caught up
yep.
with the word role. So,
And a person can be both a developer and a product owner, or a person can be a developer and Scrum Master. One person should not be product owner and Scrum Master at the same time. Has anybody other than me tried to do that before? And you want to share what happened? Holly, I see you. What happened when you tried to do this?
Well, I was voluntold to do this, and I could, maybe I self-sabotaged. That's possible. But I felt like the team trust just in my guidance as either one of those accountabilities. I almost used the word roles.
Yep.
Like it degraded both of my ability to do either of those roles to the point where I was just basically just became command and control of the team. And I didn't know how, to be honest, I don't know how else I could have been in any way successful in that role. I failed. I was put in a situation where I failed. I mean, we delivered the product, but we certainly didn't do it in a way that I would have preferred. And I don't think we had the best success that we could have had we, done it properly.
And Ken and Jeff use the word like Scrum as described in the guide as immutable. And you get people like Al Shalloway that's like, oh my God, it says it's immutable. It's just so hard to do. And by the way, Al and I go way, 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 way back too. Um, yeah. And here's the thing. So the Scrum guide says it's immutable, and if you do it differently, it's not called Scrum. Cool. You know, buyer beware. And really, especially for the people that are just getting started with this, please do not try to fall into the trap of a stakeholder or your boss saying, I need you to be product owner and Scrum Master at the same time. You will get burned. And again, maybe that's just something that you have to go through in order to understand how badly things will work out. I have not seen it successful at all, not only with me, but like with all the other teams that I've worked with when one person plays both of those Holly roles. I mean accountabilities. So
I was gonna say I have to laugh out loud because that's the situation I'm in right
mm,
now. Is I do try to push off some of the Scrum Master roles where I can.
yeah.
Because my dev lead, I'll try to it's like for the retrospectives, that kind of thing. I'll let I push to have like, okay, I need you to lead this. And that way I can kind of see it from an outsider kind of view and offer it from more of a product owner perspective. But I know we don't do a whole lot in the effect of how efficient are we. So I feel
mhm.
like that's definitely getting lost.
And really to think that the product owner is really focused on the product and the Scrum Master is really focused on the people or the process, right? Not to be the Scrum police, but really to help make sure that as people get stuck and kind of lose some of the focus on the transparency and inspection and adaptation, that you can help bring them back to center.
Yeah,
It
I
is,
find that I have fights with myself. I was like, well, from the business standpoint, I got to do this. And I was like, no, wait, like, is this practical? So I have to it takes me longer to do things because I have to think of it from both points of view.
I have a story to tell, just a real quick one on that. It wasn't product owner or Scrum Master, but the team voted their manager to be a product owner. And he's like, I can't be both your product owner and your manager. So they devised a hat for him with the head like a little tassel thing. And he would flip the tassel over when they wanted him to be one or the other. So you'd see the team members go into his office and flip his hat around. Now you're my manager. I want to complain to you about something. but yeah, it worked for them with the physical warning, but it didn't so much work for him because he would get screwed up which one he was supposed to be.
Yeah, taking the multiple stances is tough. And I think throughout our careers, everybody has to do that in reality.
Yeah.
So
Could you
just being
talk a little bit,
clear.
would you please, since we're in this area, it often also seems tough if you're trying to do the developer and Scrum Master role. And depending on the size of the team, the Scrum Master role can just dwarf what you need to also get done for as a developer.
Absolutely. And when I've done this in the past, when I've played the developer, accountability, and Scrum Master, sometimes I'll get so into the weeds of trying to solve the problem that I forget about the rest of the team and the accountability of what I have as a Scrum Master. Something that I have to watch out for.
Okay.
And it's also frustrating that, as a developer, I've seen a lot of solutions that as a Scrum Master, I'm not allowed to say, well, let me rephrase that. I shouldn't be saying, here, let me be the helicopter parent and give you the solution, right? It's allowing the team to figure out the solution to the problem so that they can deliver without your input. This really,
I'll build on that, Michael, about the so, and as a parent and desperately trying not to marshmallow or helicopter my own kids,
Mhm,
giving them the challenge for them to reflect on what they may have done or not done, or missed or not missed, so that they can come up with that solution in the moment rather than them going around in circles for weeks and weeks and weeks and going, and then you come back to them and say, "Well, I spotted that 2 weeks ago." Yeah, but it's the immediate challenge. If we have safety, then we can have that challenge at the same time.
absolutely. And the team will go through the tuck. Most teams will go through that Tuckman model of forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. And the best way for a team to get out of the storming phase is to solve their own problems. Okay. And relating it back to, parenting, right, David? It's letting the kids figure out how to solve it instead of you always being there to solve it for them. And this is hard as both parents and Scrum
Scrum
Masters.
Masters. Exactly.
So,
I've a question for you on that is, so
mhm,
the Scrum Master is accountable for establishing Scrum as defined by the Scrum Guide, and establishing is a strong word there. So as
mhm,
you say, teams get to performing, the need for the Scrum Master is less. So in that situation, and I know I've been in teams where they form dependency on me as a Scrum Master, and they don't want you to leave,
mhm,
right? They really want you around, but they don't need you anymore. They got this. They know how to hold a successful retro. They know how to come on. They all put on their video. They all have engaging conversations. They all have fun. It's working well. You don't need
mhm.
to be there. So in that, have you seen a Scrum Master moving back into the team into a developer role? So I came from an engineering role, so I've been the engineer and then Scrum Master, and it took all my time. And then I moved back more towards DevOps and doing the DevOps automation and building pipelines and things like that and getting continuous delivery running.
Yep.
Um, but anybody who is Kimberly, who mentioned it, right? Product owner, Scrum Master, if your team is more mature, are you in an easier position? It's a long statement question.
Kimberly, anything to add?
I was gonna say it's not a mature team. It was completely newly formed team. Um, so we've been essentially for everything been figuring it out as we go and figuring out what will work for us. But there have been things where we have to break bad habits and think fresh about things. And get people to talk, get people to open up and be like, no, make your suggestions, make your recommendations. Um, and then yeah, like my time is kind of split being like the UI UX designer too. So so I sort of those depending on the meeting, I'm like, what are we trying to figure out? What are we trying to do? but at
You've got
least
all the baseball caps.
right. I mean, we're a small team, but we get all of the unique challenges. So I don't know. We're making it work so far. So I always kind of stress to anybody who's trying to give us more priorities that like let us focus. 'Cause that's the one thing that we can have to our benefit. We can't be doing multiple things at once, but if you have like a big priority, we make that our full focus, we'll find a way.
Hang on. Wait, I love this button. No, 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 no. I love that one. This I usually hand out to my product owners in the product owner class if I do it in person. Like that no word is super duper important for both a Scrum Master and a product owner.
Oh yeah, it's there's a lot of aspects of this that I'm like I can't imagine somebody fresh coming into this role like how they would have managed to survive.
Yep. And remember, you've got the community of people at Agile RTP, Scrum RVA up in Richmond. We have a very active group here too. Lean on like outside people that you know. Connect with me, Catherine, or any other people in this group on LinkedIn and reach out anytime you've got questions. We make the time to do this. And if you ever reach out to somebody, let's say one of the signatories of the Agile Manifesto, and if for some reason they blow you off, let me know. Like if you need something from them, I'll call. I've worked with almost all of them, have really good relationships with all of them today, and I know some of them can be prima donnas, but at the end of the day, they got to be reminded we are still uncovering better ways to do this and sharing with others how to do it. So most
Thankfully,
of them,
I'm pretty comfortable with saying no. I guess because I'm long further enough along in my career to do so.
yep, yep.
And I'd already been with a company for 7 years before I took this. They actually they realized at some point that I'd be perfect for it.
There you go.
And the VP of engineering he forgets that I've only been in the role for like a little bit. Um, because he was just sort of like we needed somebody like that. So thankfully, since I already had that networking with the other departments, engineering, sales, that kind of thing, I've been able to say no and not feel bad about it.
Yeah, that's huge.
So,
And being able to have that political capital is good. You have that, and then you can always play the new person card for a little while too. You can always
oh yeah,
ask the dumb
yeah.
question, and
Yeah, that one for sure a little bit when it's sort of like, well, I haven't quite followed our processes, but I followed my own.
until you stick your finger into the electric socket enough and go zzz, 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 and enough. I can tell you can do that enough and get escorted out and be asked to either leave the client or it's not a good fit. So again, having that experience of how far to push and when to push. Paul, gosh, you've got to have experience in this because you've been in so many, many different situations, right? Balancing how much do you actually implement when doing this?
You have
What
to be able to adjust, that's all.
Yeah.
And I've been Scrum Master. I was just looking at some of my old retro stuff from one organization, 4 teams mixed on offshore. I was the sole Scrum Master. They actually ran Scrum pretty well without me there. And I tried to work myself out of a job. Um, and I think I eventually did, but they found valuable was like, I don't know if you all are familiar with which year I created an epic or a project called RIP, Rest in Peace. And basically I tracked impediments per sprint per team. And the senior management was surprised that that they had similar issues. So just having one team work by themselves, and then if you're a Scrum Master for multiple teams, you can see some issues that multiple teams had that were the same. It could be a DevOps. We had an architect at the time that refused fairly small organization to get involved until the very end, and he would just kill the sprint. He and I had a few words. They eventually moved him to a different role where he wasn't on the team. But see, it's tough being a Scrum Master, and I've also been with other organizations saying we don't really need a Scrum Master. You don't need a Scrum Master. Well,
Hmm.
if you've got multiple teams, you're just one sole team, and you don't need anything from any other team, and you can release independently of any other team. I would say yes. But otherwise, you need a dedicated person, if you will.
Hmm.
Anyway, I don't know if that helped or answered anything, but
No, I'm
it's
hoping
it's
these
it's tough.
background stories are good. Thank you. We're gonna move on from the Scrum team, so the developers, product owner, and Scrum Master accountabilities into the events. And the events in Scrum are pretty simple. There's the sprint, and that's the container that holds all of the other events. And then you have sprint planning, and you'll see kind of why I did this in this order a little bit later. But we've got sprint planning, the daily Scrum, the sprint review, and the retrospective. That's it. And on top of those events, we've got some artifacts. And in the 2020 Scrum Guide, again, we've been, at the 2020 Scrum Guide since, for the last 5 years plus now. They added this new concept of not only artifacts, but separated out commitments to each of the artifacts. And I do like how they did this and why they did this. And the artifacts and commitments include the product backlog as the artifact, and the commitment to the product backlog is the product goal. The product backlog and the product goal is basically your North Star. Why are we doing this product or project? And the product backlog is this never-ending list of stuff that actually will probably never be empty by the end of the project. And that's okay. And we can talk more about why that is. The sprint backlog is a subset of the product backlog. It's the high, I won't say priority, how about high ordered products in the product backlog that the team pulls from the product backlog. And the sprint goal, again, is not Jira ticket 6,654,432 to, da 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 435. It has nothing to do about Jira tickets. This is like, what features or functions are we delivering to the customer or client? What outcomes are we delivering? And the clearer you can get with that, the better your outcomes are going to get. We have this thing called the increment. These are really basically user stories at the end of the day. You can use use cases also. Notice I didn't say Jira tickets either. So, and then each increment has a definition of done that's associated, and the definition of done and acceptance criteria might look kind of similar, and really, really important before you get started that it's clear what the acceptance criteria are so that you can actually finish the iteration or sprint. So that's Scrum high level, and we're gonna jump into a couple more. Oh yes, what about this? What I do want to do is encourage you to go to subscribe.mvizdos.com. Get on the list. You can always unsubscribe. The first email will come out Saturday morning, and I will, like, when I write these things, I will write experience that I'm having with like product development teams that I'm working with today. My full-time job is not a trainer. I don't go from, city to city to city or Zoom room to Zoom room, just training. We actually run a product development company in the ed tech space. And I spend a lot of time with clients. One of my main clients is actually a school system out in Arizona where the school district, the schools, the principals, the leadership teams and all of those, the teachers and down to the students are all using Scrum and Agile to deliver. results in school. And so they're learning a lot of different things while implementing Scrum. With this slide, if you do go to it, what is good about here is it'll bring you, like, you can click on any of these things and it'll bring you right to that spot in the Scrum guide too. One of the events that does not show up, right? It's not an event, and this gets a lot of heat, is product backlog refinement. In the past, you might have called this product backlog grooming. In 2013, Ken and Jeff, yay, got rid of the word grooming, but there are organizations still that will die on the hill saying, we're grooming the product backlog. Capital One has been one forever, like that just uses the term grooming. As much as it's like, Paul and others here will know that, if words matter, sometimes you cannot change the DNA of companies, right? Oftentimes you can't. So the true word is refinement, product backlog refinement, not grooming the product backlog. And you see, I have it really almost as a dotted line happening throughout the sprint. In 2017 version and before, Ken and Jeff said, hey, plan on spending about 10% of your time, up to 10% of your time during the sprint, refining your product backlog. They got rid of that time period in the 2020 Scrum Guide. It still is a very, very important thing to do as a team. And let's say you're doing a 2 week sprint from maybe Wednesday to Wednesday. Maybe the Wednesday after the first week, maybe we spend a little bit of time doing refinement on maybe the stories that are coming up in the next sprint. There shouldn't be surprises at the sprint planning, which sometimes we see a lot of, right? And then the order events matter. You can see I have sprint planning is down here on the lower right. And one of the reasons I do that is, remember, sprint planning, you've got 3 topics. Why is the sprint valuable? What can be delivered? And you notice what's happening is we're pulling from the product backlog. The developers are pulling from the product backlog into the sprint backlog. And the developers are figuring out what can be done this sprint. And how will the chosen work get done is also up to the developers. So it goes from product owner and the product backlog saying this is what's important to developers pulling, not the product owner pushing into the sprint backlog. The daily Scrum really does focus. It used to be you answered the 3 questions, what'd you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? What's in your way? And it felt very status reporty. In the 2020 Scrum Guide, Ken and Jeff changed it really to focus on what are the impediments to meeting the sprint goal. Like, stay focused on that and move on. It can be up to 15 minutes. It can be a challenge to not turn this into like a status report meeting, especially like if you're running Jira or Trello boards. You might really, really get into the weeds, and all of a sudden, you're an hour into this, and woohoo, everybody did a report on where they are with Jira tickets, which really was probably no different than was happened yesterday. So keep the daily Scrum focused on like what's getting in the way of us as a team meeting the sprint goal. Any other suggestions on this one, or?
No, that's a really good point. I just in my good teams, we would just say, I would just say, how you doing? We would just go around the room. Hey, I'm doing fine, no issues. Fine, no issues. The gotcha to that is if there were issues and they didn't bring them up, well, we knew about it in the first sprint retro or the first sprint demo. So yeah, but I also allocate a little bit more time for the Scrum just in case I have somebody that says, "Hey, Mary, I really need help. Can you stay after this Scrum meeting?" And I already have the space reserved and the times, and then everybody else can drop off. So that seemed to work well in the past as well. But,
Yep. And it was a little different than when we did this in person to where we're now really doing this almost all via like, Zoom and
mhm,
Teams.
exactly.
So learning effectively how to have async conversations throughout the day, whether it's on Slack or Teams
Mhm,
or messaging, and not just having meetings to have meetings to plan meetings to have plan meetings, right? It's
exactly.
when you're getting together, it really is what are you focusing on to get done during that meeting, not let's plan on having another meeting. And David, you talk about the agile engineering practices like TDD or BDD or others. It's really good to carve out the time during the day to be able to do that. And again, it takes a scrum
And
master to understand that.
yeah, I think there's something. So my wife works in, I think you call it the ER room. We call it accidents and emergency over in the UK. But every day at 9:30 every morning they do a skill session. And I think a lot of teams forget that, just to
Yeah,
sit down and practice the skills, because the skills that they practice day in, day out are when there's a fire, when there's major
yep,
incident, when there's something coming in the door, they all know what to do. It's the same thing for a scrum team. When there's a production outage, X, Y, and Z, they all know what to do. So you practice those kind of incidents all the time. You do katas. That's how you
exactly.
learn, you get better. And a lot of the time, we don't even give that half hour. Just, hey, do a kata together. Here's a problem. Got it from leetcode.com. Let's see who can solve it. Maybe
Right.
work together and see who solves it. Yeah.
And that's especially important during that forming and storming stage because it helps the team develop some norms and team agreements on how to work together. The
Yeah, I was gonna
sprint
say,
review. Oh, go
oh,
ahead.
I was gonna say daily scrums provide a rather unique challenge, because at some point it starts to feel like a chore. Because like I said, it becomes very status report-y. Especially for a team like mine where we're global, we're not together, we've never seen each other. Um, so it's at the very end of their day, they just want to log off. I'm barely awake and cognizant of what we're talking about. So we try to strike a balance of like, hey, if we're doing something that we know is going to take us 2, 3 days, ping if we have to meet. Otherwise, like we will skip a day. So that way it's like a reward, I guess, in a way. Um, but at the same time, it's one of those, only bring it up though if it really is something for us to discuss rather than I'm working on ticket number 19245.
Exactly.
That kind of thing. Because that's definitely how we started was like, I'm like, I don't know what that is. Like, I don't memorize the numbers. And they
Exactly.
literally rattling it off. So that's been one that we've had to kind of adjust, and I'm sure hopefully we can keep improving it too.
Definitely. Thank you. The sprint review is the third event, and notice it doesn't say demo. The most important outcome of a sprint review is actually the feedback from your users and stakeholders. There should be no surprises at a sprint review. Ideally, a high-performing team should be able to have the product owner facilitate the review. Think about how different this is if you've been, using Scrum for a while. Like at the very beginning of this, back in 2004, like the product owner was almost like this ominous dominus, here it is, I'll see you at the demo. And that has evolved a ton in the last 20 years to where, remember, the product owner is a member of the Scrum team. And if the product owner ideally should come from the business side, the operational, whoever's going to inherit this thing at the end to run it. Uh, when you get a product owner that really is available, has the authority to say no, and the knowledge, you're in like a trifecta area where life is going to be really, really good and high performing for the team. And then the retrospective, all of your stakeholders go away, and it's just you as a team. And it doesn't have to just be the Scrum Master facilitating this event. I'd actually recommend if you've got other Scrum Masters And for people that are just getting started, maybe look for opportunities within your networks to see if you can go in and facilitate a retrospective for an acting Scrum Master in an organization today, because you can then remain neutral, especially if you as a Scrum Master are part of the problem. I don't know if anybody else has experienced that, but sometimes remaining objective during a retrospective is hard to do when, as a Scrum Master, you are maybe part of the problem. And remember, the product owner is a member of the team and should be at this retrospective with you.
I've had pretty good luck with this idea of, do your retrospectives, but just take one improvement idea and share it with the other teams after each retrospective. And that causes kind of like, it's weird, cross-team competitiveness to have the best ideas for improvement. And then they start talking more, just say, hey, just one idea, something that you learned the last sprint. It works pretty good.
And even taking that one thing, not 80 things that you're going to try to improve the next sprint. Because if you don't focus on one thing to improve in the process during your next sprint, you're not going to improve any. And at some point, you're going to get a list of like 80 things that you suck at as a team, and then say, screw it, we're just not going to do sprint retrospectives because nothing ever comes of it. Has anybody else seen this happen? Whenever I'm into an organization, I see they don't have a retrospective. Catherine, you call it a perspective sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a good way to like open up and
the retro. I don't like the word retro because it means that you're looking back, and really it should be prospective. We're looking forward. We just did something and it's only 2 weeks. Like it's a short period. We remember it. So hey, let's share it. David's got his hand up.
Yep.
Just initially, we were calling it a future perspective.
Yeah.
What actions are we going to take? But you have to look back to say what actions you're going to take. Just to tie it back to the review, one of the biggest things that came out is the team were very frustrated, and they came up and said it. We're very frustrated with the amount of spillover. We demo something, and they were calling it a demo. Demo something to the product owner. The product owner said, "That's not what we were trying to do. That's not what was in the acceptance criteria." Go back and rework it so the spillover would happen. So the team themselves came up with the idea, right? Okay, let's demo. As soon as we finish it, let's demo. Could be 2 days into the sprint, we demo to the product owner, we get the feedback. So yeah, no surprises. We got to the review. The product owner was actually the one showing it. So it took a couple of sprints. Product owner was showing it to the stakeholders and the other people that were turning up, and we were capturing additional feedback, which then turned into new product backlog items. It wasn't trying to change the scope, and we had to work on that one as well. The product owner was like, "Can I just add another acceptance criteria to that story?" Like, no, we finished that.
Right.
Done. Here's a new backlog item. Now you prioritize it. Where's it going to go? Are we doing this next, or oh yeah, that's nice to have. We'll have that little bit further on. So that was a real value in the retrospective and the team coming up with the action, because they were feeling the pain of, yes, every spilled over items are bad. We don't want those. So what are we going to do? We'll have in-sprint demos.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I had an interesting experience when you talk about, building up this backlog. I came into a team and they had the most beautiful Kanban board I think I've ever seen. It was so well organized. It was color coded. And what they had done is they'd taken all these retrospective items and put them on this board. And it was amazing, right? It was a beautiful Kanban board. It had time and state measure and everything. And I was like, wait, whip limits. It was like the most perfect Kanban board ever. But there was a lot on there. And I came in and I said, so, this is the most wonderful Kanban board I've ever seen. It's so well executed. And I'm like, why is there nothing in the done column? They're like, oh, we don't ever really resolve a lot of these things. We just kind of have them on the board. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like the done column had like 6 things in it, and the rest of the board had, I'm like hundreds of items. Yeah. And I just, that's to the point that someone just made here, right, is like the team would look at that board and how deflating, right? They spend all these hours and they can't get someone in leadership to help them resolve these issues that they've brought up in good faith, right? It was really an eye-opening experience for me.
And it does bring up, what is the point of this whole thing? It is focus and deliver, like
Yeah.
constantly. Just keep
Mm-hmm.
deliver, and make sure you're focusing on the most important things. So we're at about time. I want to I want to respect everybody's time this evening. Thank you for participating. That the link again is up there. I will have a recording of this out on the site. I do invite you to go ahead and subscribe to the newsletter and connect with me on LinkedIn. I've got a super, super strong network on LinkedIn, and especially for people that are looking for jobs or have jobs, let me know because I constantly am connecting people all the time. One of the things if you do connect with me or even follow me on LinkedIn is I will reshare almost all the time without comments some of the interesting jobs that I'm seeing. Most of the time, it's from people that I trust. I never will say, I endorse this job, and these are all around the world. It's not just US based because I know, again, you never know. With that, we can call it a night. Catherine, thank you so much.
Thank you. And everybody have a good night. Really great to see the crowd that we had. And if you want to be a speaker, you have a topic you want to bring up, ping me. I'd love to have it. All right. Have a good evening, everybody.